The galaxy was wide beyond imagination. Stars burned in every direction, and worlds circled them like tiny gems. Some planets were deserts of fire, some frozen in endless winter, and some filled with green forests and clear rivers. Among these countless places lived countless species, each struggling to survive, each trying to build a home in the great dark. Among those species were the Veari. They were not warriors. They were not conquerors. They were a people of peace, tall, slender beings with voices like music. Their culture was built on song, healing, and the sharing of knowledge. They raised their children not with weapons but with stories and gentle lessons. They tended gardens that stretched for miles, and their cities shone with light and harmony. To live among the Veari was to live without fear, but peace in the galaxy was fragile. It never lasted. The storm came in the form of the Kraylan Armada. The Kraylan were not builders. They were not dreamers. They were destroyers, conquerors, raiders of worlds. Their fleets were endless black spears stabbing across the stars, consuming everything in their path. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. To the Kraylan, other civilizations were not neighbors. They were prey. When the Armada reached the Veari worlds, there was no warning, no mercy. The skies above the first world turned red as Kraylan ships burned the air. Their cannons shattered city towers in seconds. Forests that had stood for centuries were reduced to ash in moments. The Veari tried to reason with them. They sent messages of peace, offered gifts, begged for understanding. But the only reply was fire. Families fled into the underground shelters. Children clung to their parents, crying as the earth shook from bombardment. The healers who once saved lives on peaceful days now worked with trembling hands, trying to mend wounds caused by weapons they had never even imagined. The songs of the Veari were drowned out by the screams of war. The Kraylan took more than land. They took people. Millions were captured and dragged into slave ships. Whole families were torn apart. Those who resisted were executed without hesitation. The beautiful cities of the Veari were left in ruins. Their gardens were trampled under the boots of invaders. What had taken centuries to build was destroyed in weeks. The survivors had no choice but to flee. Old cargo ships, research vessels, and damaged cruisers became a desperate refugee fleet. They left their burning worlds behind, carrying with them only sorrow, hunger, and memories of what had been lost. But even in their despair, the Veari were not silent. They had one last chance, a message. With failing power and broken transmitters, they sent out a call across the galaxy. The message was not a demand. It was not a command. It was a plea to any who hear this. We are the Veari. Our worlds are gone. Our people are dying. The Kraylan have taken everything from us, please. If there is anyone out there who can help, anyone who still believes in mercy and justice, we beg you, do not let us vanish. The words carried through the void. The signal traveled past suns, across nebulae, through the silence of interstellar space. It was weak. It was broken in places, but it was filled with raw pain, and yet the galaxy gave no answer. The great empires heard, but they looked away. The Veari had no armies to offer, no riches to trade. Why risk the wrath of the Kraylan for a race of singers and gardeners? To them, the Veari were already lost. Better to pretend the message had never reached them. Neighboring systems heard too, but they closed their borders. They whispered fearfully about the Kraylan Armada, about how no one could stand against them. Helping the Veari, they decided, would only bring death to their own people, so they sealed their gates and let the refugees drift past unwanted. The message traveled further. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The Veari grew weaker. Their food supplies dwindled. Disease spread in the cramped ships. Children who once laughed now sat in silence, too tired to cry. Every time they looked to the stars, they hoped for an answer, but no one came. The Veari were a proud people once, but now they were shadows of themselves. They began to believe their message had been swallowed by the cold void, forgotten like their burned worlds. The thought of extinction weighed heavily on them. They sang no more. Their voices, once a gift to the stars, had gone silent, and yet even as hope dimmed, their signal still echoed. It moved endlessly through the galaxy, bouncing from relay to relay, stretching across systems where no Veari would ever set foot. A faint cry in the darkness, a cry that was about to be heard. For while the empires had turned away, while the neighbors had closed their doors, there was one world where silence was never the answer. A small blue world the galaxy feared and whispered about. Earth. And Earth was listening. On the edge of the galaxy, the message of the Veari finally reached its destination. It was not the great empires that answered. It was not the powerful coalitions or the ancient dynasties of the stars. It was Earth. Humanity lived on a world that others called a death world. To alien scholars, Earth was a nightmare planet. Its storms were violent, its oceans unpredictable, its deserts burning, its mountains freezing. Life on Earth was a constant battle against nature itself. Predators hunted with cunning. Diseases spread with merciless speed. Volcanoes erupted without warning. Ice crushed ships. Fire consumed forests, and yet through all of it, humanity survived. They adapted. They fought back. They learned to thrive in conditions that would kill most other species in ours. To the wider galaxy, humans were unpredictable, reckless, even dangerous. But among themselves, they had another name: survivors. When the Veari message reached Earth's defense networks, it did not fall into silence. It was translated, analyzed, and then played to leaders, soldiers, and ordinary citizens. The words of sorrow touched the hearts of billions. The Veari begged for deliverance. They begged for someone, anyone, to hear them, and humanity did. Meetings were held. Some argued that Earth should remain quiet. The Kraylan armada was vast, far larger than the Terran fleets. Why risk destruction for a people so far away? Why sacrifice human lives for strangers? But others stood, their voices burning with conviction. "We know what it means to be ignored," one said. "We know what it feels like to cry for help and hear nothing but silence. Are we now going to do the same?" A general leaned forward. His words were steady, firm. "If no one else will answer, then we will. Not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because it is right." That decision spread like wildfire. Across the nations of Earth, volunteers lined up. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, medics, all ready to leave their families, their homes, their world behind. They knew the risks. They knew many would not return. But they also knew that humanity could not stand idle while innocents were hunted. For the first time in its history, the united Terran fleet moved as one. The fleet was unlike anything the Veari had ever seen. Great carriers that could launch wings of fighters into the void. Heavy cruisers armed with cannons that fired slugs the size of cars at near-light speed. Dreadnoughts, massive floating fortresses, each one a city of steel and fire. And among them, smaller ships, frigates and destroyers, fast and agile, built for sudden strikes and daring rescues. This was not a fleet of diplomats. These were not envoys carrying promises of negotiation. No, these were warriors from a death world, carrying with them the will to fight. When the humans prepared for launch, there was no cheering. There was no celebration. Families said goodbye in silence. Children hugged their parents tightly, unsure if they would ever see them again. But in every human heart burned the same determination. We go because someone must. The engines roared to life. Blue flames lit the dark, and the fleet leapt into the stars. The journey was long through empty systems and lonely stretches of darkness. But when they finally reached the coordinates carried by the Veari signal, they did not find an empire. They did not find an army waiting in strength. They found a broken refugee fleet. The Veari ships drifted like ghosts, patched together with scraps and hope. Their lights flickered. Their hulls bore scars of battle and escape. Inside, the people were weak, thin from hunger, weary from endless running, and haunted by memories of burning skies. At first, the Veari could not believe what they saw. Strange ships appeared in the void, ships with designs they had never encountered before. Fear gripped them. Were these new enemies? Another threat come to finish what the Kraylan had begun? But then the message came clear and strong across the comms. "We heard you. You are not alone." The words spread through the Veari ships like fire through dry grass. People who had given up hope lifted their heads. Mothers held their children close, whispering that maybe, just maybe, they were safe. The healers wept openly, their tears of despair finally mixed with tears of relief. Still, the Veari leaders were afraid. They sent warnings to the humans. "You do not understand. The Kraylan are too strong. Their fleets are endless. If you stand with us, you will be destroyed." The human reply was simple. "Then we will be destroyed standing beside you. But we do not plan on being destroyed today." The Veari did not understand this kind of defiance. They had lived in harmony for so long that the thought of fighting seemed impossible. But when they looked into the eyes of the humans on their screens, they saw something that could not be ignored. Fire. A will that refused to bend, a promise that they would not abandon those in need. In that moment, something shifted. The Vayari, once alone and forgotten, felt the first spark of hope return. For the first time since the fall of their worlds, they believed that maybe deliverance was not just a dream. They had begged the galaxy for help. The galaxy had turned away, but Earth had answered, and Earth did not send diplomats. It sent its Deathworlders. The Vayari refugee fleet drifted in the cold emptiness of space. Their ships were patched with weak metal, their engines coughed with failing power, and their people sat in silence. They had grown used to disappointment. Every star they passed, every system they entered had given them the same answer. Closed doors, closed hearts. No one dared to help them. But then something new appeared. Sensors lit up with signals the Vayari had never seen before. Large ships, powerful ships, approached from the void. They were shaped like blades and fortresses, their hulls dark and scarred, their engines glowing with fire. Fear rippled through the refugee fleet. Whispers spread quickly. The Kralin have found us. Mothers pulled their children close. The healers covered their faces in despair. Captains readied what few weapons they had, though they knew it was useless. But then, across the silence, a message came. "We heard you. You are not alone." The words were strange, carried in a rough, deep voice. They were translated by machines, but even so, the strength in them was clear. The Vayari froze. Their hearts beat faster. For a moment, they could not believe it. Could it be true? Could these strangers be answering the plea that had drifted through the galaxy for so long? The humans revealed themselves slowly. Images appeared on screens inside the refugee ships, faces of a species the Vayari had never seen before. They were shorter, heavier, their eyes filled with sharp focus, their skin marked by many colors. To the Vayari, who had always lived in harmony, these humans looked fierce, almost frightening. But their expressions were not cruel. They were steady, strong, filled with something the Vayari had forgotten: determination. The Vayari elders hesitated. They sent a message back, their voices trembling. "You do not understand. The Kralin are too strong. Their fleets are endless. If you help us, they will come for you too. They will destroy you as they destroyed us." The humans listened, and then one of their commanders leaned forward, his voice steady as iron. "Then let them come. If we fall standing beside you, but we do not plan on falling today." The Vayari stared at the message in silence. They had never heard words like this. They were a people of peace, a people who ran when fire came, because they had no way to fight. To them, standing against the Kralin seemed impossible. Yet here were these humans from a distant blue world, speaking with the certainty of warriors who had already stared death in the face and refused to bow. The first meeting between the two species was not held in a palace, nor in a grand council chamber. It was held in the hangar bay of a human carrier, its steel walls towering, its floors lined with machines of war. The Vayari delegation arrived in a small shuttle, their robes simple, their movements nervous. They expected suspicion. They expected harshness. What they found was different. Humans lined the hangar, not with weapons drawn, but with heads held high. They saluted their commanders, and then they simply watched, curious. To the humans, these survivors were not strangers, they were allies already. The Vayari stepped forward, their voices soft. Why come for us? "You owe us nothing. We have no riches to pay you, no armies to join you, only sorrow." The human commander's answer was simple. "Because we heard you, because no one else did, and because one day it could be us begging in the dark, we will not turn away." The words struck deep. The Vayari lowered their heads, tears falling freely. They had begged the galaxy for deliverance, and for the first time someone had answered. From that moment, the Vayari began to see humans differently. They watched the Terran fleet at work. The humans did not rest. They trained, they repaired, they planned. Every soldier carried scars. Every pilot wore exhaustion like armor, but none complained. Their strength was not just in their weapons, but in their unity, in the way they stood together as if they were one family. The Vayari children peeked out from the safety of their ships to see human fighters practicing in the void. They pointed and whispered with awe, their voices rising in excitement for the first time in months. Healers traded knowledge with human medics, amazed at the way Deathworld medicine worked. Fast, rough, but effective. Engineers from both sides compared tools. and the Vayari soon realized that humans could fix anything with scrap, fire, and sheer stubbornness. Where the Vayari saw only weakness in themselves, the humans saw potential. Where the Vayari saw only fear, the humans offered courage. But hope always carried a shadow. The Kralin were not blind. Scouts soon reported that the Armada had learned of the refugees' position. A fleet was coming, vast, terrible, unstoppable. The Vayari trembled at the news. Once again, fear spread through their ships. Once again, they prepared for the end. But the humans did not tremble. They looked at one another, at their ships, their weapons, their allies, and they smiled. "Good," said one captain. "Let them come. They will learn what it means to fight Deathworlders." The Vayari felt their fear slowly shift. It did not vanish, but it mixed with something stronger. For the first time, they dared to believe they might survive. Not because the Kralin were weak, but because humanity was strong. They had begged the galaxy for deliverance, and the galaxy had turned away. But Earth had answered, and the Deathworlders were ready to fight. The warning came like thunder. The Kralin Armada was approaching. Their warships filled the scanners like a storm of black shadows. Dozens, then hundreds of massive vessels, each bristling with weapons, each carrying the pride of conquerors who had never been defeated. The Vayari trembled. They had seen this sight before, the dark wall of enemy ships blotting out the stars. They remembered their cities burning, their families taken. Their hearts told them the same fate was about to fall again. But this time they were not alone. The humans prepared for battle. On the command decks of their carriers and dreadnoughts, officers spoke calmly, their voices sharp and steady. Pilots climbed into their fighters, checking systems, fastening helmets. Soldiers loaded weapons, armor gleaming under the harsh lights. Engineers rushed through the corridors, repairing every system, sealing every hatch. The Terran fleet moved with precision. Where the Vayari had seen only chaos in themselves, the humans brought order. Where the Vayari expected silence, the humans answered with determination. When the first Kralin ships entered the system, the humans did not hide. They advanced. The battle began with fire. Missiles streaked from human ships, leaving trails of burning light. Railguns fired slugs at incredible speed, smashing into Kralin shields and shaking their formations. Human fighters swarmed like angry hornets, darting between larger vessels, striking at weak points, then vanishing before enemy guns could catch them. The Kralin fired back with overwhelming force. Their cannons spat destruction. Their beams sliced through space, and their torpedoes streaked toward the human lines. The void lit up with death. A human destroyer took a direct hit. Its hull split open, flames bursting into space. Alarms screamed. But even as the ship burned, it kept firing until the last moment. The crew fought until their weapons ran dry, and only then did the ship break apart in silence. The Vayari gasped as they watched. They had never seen such defiance. To fight even while dying. It was something alien to them and yet deeply moving. The human commanders knew they could not win through strength alone. The Kralin outnumbered them. Their ships were heavier, their fleets larger. So the humans turned to what they knew best. Strategy, cunning, and the will to never stop fighting. They split the fleet into fast-moving groups. Some ships drew the Kralin in, forcing them to chase. Others circled wide, striking at their flanks. Human fighters laid traps with mines and decoys, leading enemy squadrons straight into crossfire. Again and again, the Kralin tried to crush them with brute force. Again and again, the humans slipped away, striking from unexpected angles, cutting through armor, burning through engines. The Vayari watched in awe. They had always believed the Kralin to be unstoppable, an endless storm. But here were the humans, smaller, fewer, yet fighting with such fury that the storm itself began to falter. Inside one human carrier, medics worked without pause. Wounded soldiers were carried in, bloodied and broken. Some had burns, others had shattered limbs. The medics did not rest. They worked with shaking hands, voices firm as they promised, "You'll make it. Stay with us." Even those too hurt to return to battle refused to give up. They begged to be sent back to help in any way they could. Some took stations as loaders, some carried messages, some stood beside their comrades with nothing but determination in their eyes. The Vayari healers, who had been welcomed aboard, watched this with tears. They joined in, using their gentle arts to soothe pain, to heal wounds, to save lives. And for the first time, humans and Vayari worked side by side in war. The battle raged for hours. The black hulks of Kraylan ships collided with the fire and fury of human steel. The system shook with destruction. Then at last came a turning point. The human fleet drew the Kraylan flagship into a trap. Fighters swarmed around it, disabling its escorts. Cruisers struck from hidden positions, battering its shields. Then the Terran dreadnought. Hot iron resolve advanced, its railguns glowing white-hot. With a single thunderous shot, it pierced the flagship's hull. The explosion tore across the vessel, splitting it apart. The shockwave rippled through the armada. The Kraylan, for the first time, hesitated. They had never known fear. They had never faced enemies who fought with such ferocity, who refused to bow even when outnumbered, who turned every weakness into strength. And now, for the first time, the armada began to retreat. The Vayari could not believe what they were seeing. The Kraylan, the monsters who had taken everything from them, were turning away. Their ships, once so terrifying, now burned in retreat. On every Vayari vessel, voices rose. Not in despair this time, but in awe, in hope. Some wept, some shouted, some simply stared at the humans' ships with gratitude beyond words. The humans had stood where no one else would. They had fought where no one else dared. And though the battle had left scars, though human ships drifted in ruin, though lives had been lost, they had done the impossible. The Kraylan armada had been stopped. For the first time, deliverance felt real. The battle was over, but the silence that followed was heavy. Where once the skies burned with fire and cannon blasts, now only wreckage drifted. Shattered hulls spun slowly in the void, broken pieces of both Kraylan and human ships glinting against distant stars. The Kraylan armada had fled. For the first time, their endless storm had been pushed back. But victory had come at a terrible price. Human ships floated in ruin. Destroyers had been torn apart. Cruisers carried black scars where weapons had ripped through armor. Fighters, once fast and fierce, were now nothing but fragments scattered across space. Thousands of human lives had been lost in just those few hours of battle. The Vayari, safe for now, looked out upon the wreckage with trembling hearts. Relief mixed with sorrow. They had prayed for deliverance, and the humans had given it. But at what cost? On the human carrier Resolute Dawn, the medbay was overflowing. Wounded soldiers filled every bed, some groaning in pain, others silent and still. Medics rushed between them, voices firm, hands steady, even as exhaustion pulled at their bodies. The Vayari healers joined them. Their gentle songs and soothing touches eased the pain of human warriors, though many wounds could not be healed. For every life saved, another slipped away. The healers wept quietly, unused to such endless loss. A young Vayari child hiding behind her mother watched as a human soldier clutched the hand of his comrade, whispering until his breath faded. The child had never seen such courage in death. She whispered to her mother, "Why do they fight for us when it costs them so much?" The mother could not answer. She only held her daughter tightly, her heart breaking with both sorrow and gratitude. In the command deck of the dreadnought Iron Resolve, the human admiral stood silent. Reports came in. Ships destroyed, crews lost, fighters gone. His jaw tightened with every word, but he did not bow his head. A Vayari elder approached him, their voice shaking. "You have already given too much. You do not need to die for us. Please, stop. You have done more than enough." The admiral turned, his face pale with fatigue, but his eyes burning like fire. "This is not just your fight. This is ours too. If we turn away now, then what are we? We are human. We finish what we start. We stand with those who cannot stand alone." The elder lowered their head, tears falling freely. They had never understood such words before. The galaxy's empires always spoke of profit, of risk, of what could be gained or lost. But these humans spoke only of duty, of family, of refusing to abandon the weak. The days after the battle were filled with grief. Memorials were held aboard the surviving ships. Names of the fallen echoed through the corridors. Human voices, deep and heavy, spoke of comrades, friends, and loved ones who would never return home. The Vayari joined them, singing soft songs of mourning. Their melodies blended with human silence, and for a moment, the two species grieved as one. Children of the Vayari placed flowers, grown in the last small gardens they carried aboard their refugee ships, on the coffins of human soldiers. Families whispered promises to remember their sacrifice. The Vayari had lost much, but in the humans, they saw something they had never known before. A willingness to bleed for strangers, a strength born not from cruelty, but from compassion. Still, the war was not over. Scouts warned that the Kralin would return. The armada had been pushed back but not destroyed. More battles would come, more blood would be spilled. The humans did not hide this truth. They did not promise easy victory. They only promised that they would not leave. A human captain spoke to the Vayari in a gathering broadcast across both fleets. "We are not saviors. We are not gods. We are just people like you. We bleed, we break, we fall, but we rise again. Always. That is what it means to be human. And now you rise with us. Together we will make sure the Kralin learn what it means to face those who will not bow." The words lit a spark in the Vayari. For so long they had only known fear. But now, hearing those words, they felt something new inside themselves. Courage. On one quiet night, as ships drifted in the dark between battles, a group of Vayari children gathered with human soldiers. The children asked them with innocent voices, "Why do you fight for us?" One soldier, scarred and weary, smiled softly. He picked up one of the children and set her on his knee. "Because one day it might be us begging for help, and if no one listens, then we are lost. We will not let that happen to anyone, not while we can fight." The child nodded, not fully understanding, but feeling the warmth in his words. She reached up and placed a small flower in his hand. He tucked it into his armor, holding it as if it were more valuable than any weapon. The cost of deliverance was heavy. The humans knew it. The Vayari knew it. The battlefield was a graveyard of ships and souls, but hope had survived. And in that hope a bond was forged. The Vayari no longer felt like orphans of the stars. They had found protectors. They had found allies. They had found family. And the humans, though scarred, though grieving, stood taller than ever. For every loss they endured, their resolve only grew. The Kralin had taken much, but they had awakened something far more dangerous than they realized. They had awakened the wrath of Deathworlders. The battle was over, but the silence that followed was heavy. Where once the skies burned with fire and cannon blasts, now only wreckage drifted. Shattered hulls spun slowly in the void, broken pieces of both Kralin and human ships glinting against distant stars. The Kralin armada had fled. For the first time, their endless storm had been pushed back. But victory had come at a terrible price. Human ships floated in ruin. Destroyers had been torn apart. Cruisers carried black scars where weapons had ripped through armor. Fighters, once fast and fierce, were now nothing but fragments scattered across space. Thousands of human lives had been lost in just those few hours of battle. The Vayari, safe for now, looked out upon the wreckage with trembling hearts. Relief mixed with sorrow. They had prayed for deliverance and the humans had given it. But at what cost? On the human carrier Resolute Dawn, the medbay was overflowing. Wounded soldiers filled every bed, some groaning in pain, others silent and still. Medics rushed between them, voices firm, hands steady, even as exhaustion pulled at their bodies. The Vayari healers joined them. Their gentle songs and soothing touches eased the pain of human warriors, though many wounds could not be healed. For every life saved, another slipped away. The healers wept quietly, unused to such endless loss. A young Vayari child hiding behind her mother watched as a human soldier clutched the hand of his comrade, whispering until his breath faded. The child had never seen such courage in death. She whispered to her mother, "Why do they fight for us when it costs them so much?" The mother could not answer. She only held her daughter tightly, her heart breaking with both sorrow and gratitude. In the command deck of the dreadnought Iron Resolve, the human admiral stood silent. Reports came in. Ships destroyed, crews lost, fighters gone. His jaw tightened with every word, but he did not bow his head. A Vayari elder approached him, their voice shaking. "You have already given too much. You do not need to die for us. Please, stop. You have done more than enough." The admiral turned, his face pale with fatigue, but his eyes burning like fire. "This is not just your fight. This is ours too. If we turn away now, then what are we? We are human. We finish what we start. We stand with those who cannot stand alone." The elder lowered their head, tears falling freely. They had never understood such words before. The galaxy's empires always spoke of profit, of risk, of what could be gained or lost. But these humans spoke only of duty, of family, of refusing to abandon the weak. The days after the battle were filled with grief. Memorials were held aboard the surviving ships. Names of the fallen echoed through the corridors. Human voices, deep and heavy, spoke of comrades, friends, and loved ones who would never return home. The Veyari joined them, singing soft songs of mourning. Their melodies blended with human silence, and for a moment, the two species grieved as one. Children of the Veyari placed flowers, grown in the last small gardens they carried aboard their refugee ships, on the coffins of human soldiers. Families whispered promises to remember their sacrifice. The Veyari had lost much, but in the humans they saw something they had never known before, a willingness to bleed for strangers, a strength